The worst part is that it all started with something boring. Not a fight, not a confession, not even a bad decision made late at night. Just an email. One stupid, routine email that I sent at 9:14 a.m. on a Tuesday, while half asleep and already counting the minutes until lunch. I'd sent hundreds like it before. Attach file. Add subject. Hit send. Done. Except this time, the file was wrong. I realized it almost immediately. That horrible, slow burn realization that starts in your stomach and crawls up into your chest, squeezing everything tight. I stare at my screen, rereading the email like it might magically change if I looked hard enough. It didn't. I'd sent a confidential internal report to an external partner. Full cost breakdown. Internal margins. Notes that were never meant to leave our company. The kind of mistake they warn you about during onboarding, right after the slide that says this could result in termination. Damn, I muttered, barely moving my lips. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. My hands hovered uselessly over the keyboard. Recall the email? That almost never worked. Follow up pretending it was a mistake? That only helped if no one had opened it yet. I was still frozen when a shadow appeared at the edge of my desk. Victor. I flinched and looked up. Marcus. Of course it was Marcus. He leaned casually against the divider between our desks, coffee in hand, sleeves rolled up like always. He had that calm, grounded presence that made everyone assume he knew what he was doing even when things were on fire. Dark hair a little messy, sharp eyes that missed absolutely nothing. We worked on the same team, same floor, same projects. We talked most days, but we weren't close. Friendly, professional, safe. Or at least, that's what I thought. You okay? He asked. You look like you just saw a ghost. I swallowed. Yeah, just tired. He didn't buy it. Marcus never did. Tired doesn't usually make people turn that color. I hesitated. Every logical part of my brain told me to shut up, stand up, and walk straight in my manager's office. But panic has a way of grabbing the wheel. I messed up, I said quietly. Like really messed up. His posture changed instantly. Coffee lowered. Attention sharpened. What kind of messed up? I leaned closer, keeping my voice low. I sent the wrong attachment. To the vendor. Marcus blinked once. How wrong? The internal version, I said. With margins. For a second, he just stared at me. Then he exhaled slowly. Okay. That word okay didn't match the situation at all. But somehow it helped. That's not okay. I whispered. That's career ending. Not yet, he said calmly. Who did you send it to? I told him. He ran a hand through his hair, jaw tightening slightly. All right. We still have time. I echoed. Marcus turned his monitor slightly, so I could see. I pulled that file for you yesterday. IT's go to see that if this escalates. My stomach dropped again, somehow, finding new depth. Oh my God, I said. Marcus, I'm so sorry. I didn't even think dash. I know, he interrupted. Not angry, just steady. I'm not blaming you. I'm just saying, if this turns into a thing, I'm already in it. The office around us kept moving. Phones ringing, chairs rolling, someone laughing too loudly near the printer. And yet, it felt like everything had narrowed down to the two of us and that glowing screen. Okay, he said. First, recall the email. Then send a follow-up saying the attachment was incorrect and updated info is coming. No details. No panique. I nodded, hands shaking as I did exactly what he said. Marcus stayed beside me the entire time. Close enough that I could smell his cologne clean, subtle. Close enough that I felt strangely aware of him in a way I hadn't before. When I finally hit send on the follow-up email, I leaned back in my chair exhausted. Marcus didn't move. You good? He asked quietly. I let out a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. No, but better. He smiled then. Just a little. Not for anyone else. Good, he said. We'll deal with it if they respond. We again. That was the moment everything shifted, even if I didn't fully understand it yet. Because once you share a secret like that, once you realize someone is tied to your mistake just as tightly as you stop seeing them as just a coworker. You start seeing them as someone standing on the edge of the same cliff. And that kind of closeness, it's dangerous. The reply didn't come that day, or the next, which somehow made it worse. By Wednesday afternoon, The tension had settled into my body like a low-grade fever. Every email notification made my shoulders jump. Every time my phone buzzed on my desk, my heart spiked before my brain could catch up. Marcus noticed. Of course he did. He started checking in without making it obvious, rolling his chair past my desk a little more often, dropping casual comments like, "Anything yet?" or "Still quiet?" Like we were talking about the weather and not a potential HR disaster. "Nothing," I said for the 10th time that day. "That's good," he replied. Silence means they probably haven't opened it. I wanted to believe him. I really did. But guilt does weird things to your head. I replayed the mistake over and over, imagining worst-case scenarios. Angry calls, meetings with closed doors, my manager's disappointed look. Getting escorted out with a cardboard box. Marcus getting dragged into it. Because of me. That part ate at me the most. On Thursday morning, I found him in the break room, standing in front of the coffee machine like it had personally offended him. "It's broken again," he said, pressing the button harder than necessary. "Maybe it just doesn't respond well to aggression," I offered weakly. He snorted, glancing at me. Story of my life. We stood there in awkward silence until he sighed and stepped back. "You want to grab coffee outside? The real kind. Not this brown sadness." I hesitated. We'd never done that before. Lunch, sure. A quick walk, maybe. But this felt different. "Yeah," I said. I could use air. We walked to the CFA across the street. The late morning sun too bright for how tired I felt. Marcus walked close beside me, hands in his pockets, shoulders relaxed like nothing in the world was wrong. I envied him for that. Inside, the CFA smelled like roasted beans and sugar. We ordered, then took a small table near the window. "So," he said, wrapping his hand around his cup. "You sleeping at all?" I laughed softly. "Is it that obvious? You've refreshed your inbox approximately 1,000 times since Monday." 800, I corrected. "Maybe 9. He smiled, then softened. "Hey, if this goes sideways, we'll deal with it. Together." There was again. That word. I looked at him. Really looked at him. The crease between his brows when he focused. The way his voice dropped when he was serious. I realized I trusted him more than I should. More than made sense for someone I barely knew outside of work. "Thank you," I said quietly, "for not freaking out." He shrugged. "I've made worse mistakes." That surprised me. "You?" "Oh yeah," he said. "I just hide them better." Something about that made me relax. Just a little. When we got back to the office, the day crawled by. No reply. No follow-up. By Friday afternoon, I was almost convinced we'd gotten away with it. Almost. It was 3:47 p.m. when the email came in. Vendor name. Subject line. Quick question. My stomach dropped. Marcus saw my face before I said anything. "That's them, isn't it?" I nodded, fingers hovering over the mouse. "I don't want to open it." "Okay," he said calmly. "Then don't." "I will." He pulled his chair closer to mine. So close our knees almost touched. My brain registered that in a completely unhelpful way. He clicked. We read it together. "Hey Victor, thanks for the update. We noticed the initial attachment had some extra internal info assuming that was sent in error. Just wanted to flag it. Let us know when the corrected file is ready." That was it. No anger. No threats. Just a question. I sagged back in my chair, adrenaline crashing through me. That's good, right?" Marcus let out a breath. "That's very good. So they saw it," I said. "Yes," he replied. "But they're being professional about it." Which means we respond, own it lightly, and move on. My heart was still racing. "And we don't tell management?" "Not unless they escalate," he said. "This stays between us and them." Between us. I drafted the reply, my hand steadier this time. Marcus read it over my shoulder, pointing out a word here, a phrase there. When I sent it, he clapped a hand lightly on my shoulder. "You did good." The touch was brief. Casual. It lingered anyway. That evening, the office slowly emptied out. People logged off, joked about weekend plans, disappeared into elevators. I stayed at my desk longer than usual, drained. Marcus was still there too. When I finally stood, stretching, he glanced up. "You heading out?" "Yeah," I said. "You?" "In a minute." I hesitated. "You want to grab a drink?" The question surprised both of us. He paused, studying me for a second, then smiled. "Yeah, I think we earned one." We didn't talk about work at the bar. Not really. We talked about music, bad bosses, the weird comfort of routines. He told me about moving to the city alone. I told him about how I always double-check emails now too late. Somewhere between the second beer and his quiet laugh at something I said, I realized something unsettling. The mistake had stopped being the most intense thing between us, and that scared me more than any email ever could. I woke up Saturday morning with a dull headache and Marcus's laugh still echoing in my ears. Not the loud kind, the quieter one, the one he only used when something genuinely caught him off guard. We hadn't done anything reckless the night before. No dramatic confessions, no drunken mistakes, just drinks that turned into more drinks, conversations that drifted without effort, and an unspoken agreement not to mention the email that had started all of this. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that something had shifted. By Monday, the office felt different. Not in a way anyone else could notice, but I could. Marcus and I moved around each other with a new kind of awareness. Our desks hadn't gotten closer, but it felt like the space between them had shrunk anyway. He stopped by my desk mid-morning, tapping the edge lightly with his knuckles. "You survived the weekend?" "Barely," I said. "You?" "Same." He paused. "No emails." I smiled despite myself. Good. That should have been the end of it. Crisis averted. Lesson learned. Instead, the silence became something we shared. We started having lunch together more regularly. Not every day, but enough that people noticed. Someone joked about us becoming inseparable. Another asked if we were working on a secret project. We laughed it off, but late afternoons were the worst. That quiet hour when deadlines loomed and the office thinned out. When Marcus would lean over my desk to point something out on my screen, his arm brushing mine, close enough that I could feel his warmth. I hated how much I noticed it. One evening, a week later, we were the last two on our side of the floor. The lights dimmed automatically, casting everything in that sterile after-hours glow. "You heading out?" Marcus asked. "In a minute," I said. "Just finishing this." He nodded, then hesitated. "Hey, can I ask you something?" I glanced up. "Sure." "Why did you tell me?" he asked. "About the email." The question caught me off guard. "I don't know," I admitted. "Panic, I guess." He studied me for a second, expression unreadable. "You could have gone straight to management." "I know, but you didn't." "No." Something heavy settled between us. Not uncomfortable, just honest. "I think," I said slowly, "you felt safe." Marcus let out a quiet breath. Yeah. He looked away briefly, jaw tightening like he was debating something internally. Then he nodded once. "I'm glad you did." The elevator dinged in the distance. Someone laughing on their way out. The world moving normally around us. "I should go," I said, standing too quickly. Marcus didn't stop me. But as I grabbed my bag, he said my name. "Victor." I turned. "Next time something like that happens," he said, voice low, "you don't have to carry it alone." The words hit harder than they should have. That night, I lay awake thinking about them. About how sharing a mistake had somehow turned into sharing everything else: stress, relief, laughter, glances held a second too long. By Thursday, the tension was impossible to ignore. It came to a head during a late meeting prep. We were in a small conference room, door closed, reviewing numbers on Marcus's laptop. The room felt too warm, too quiet. "You're staring," he said without looking up. "Sorry," I muttered. "Long day." He finally looked at me then. Really looked. "Victor," he said carefully, "are we okay?" I laughed nervously. "Why wouldn't we be?" "Because," he said, closing the laptop, "this doesn't feel like just co-workers anymore." My pulse spiked. "What does it feel like?" Marcus leaned back in his chair, eyes never leaving mine. Like we crossed a line and never talked about it. The room felt suddenly very small. "I don't regret it," I said before I could stop myself. His expression softened. "Neither do I." Silence stretched between us. Charged. Fragile. "I just need to know," he said quietly, "if this is something you want to keep pretending isn't happening." I swallowed. Because in that moment, I knew pretending was no longer an option. And whatever we were about to admit would change everything again. I didn't answer him right away. Not because I didn't know, but because saying it out loud felt like stepping off a ledge. Marcus watched me patiently, like he wasn't about to blow up his work life by asking the question he just asked. The hum of the projector filled the silence, the numbers on the screen frozen and irrelevant. "I don't want to pretend," I finally said. The words landed between us, heavier than I expected. His jaw tightened, then relaxed. "Okay, just that. No pressure. No ruse." I exhaled, realizing how tense I'd been. I don't know what this becomes. And that scares me." "Same," he admitted, "but it scares me less than ignoring it." That was Marcus in a sentence. We packed up in silence after that, the kind that felt full instead of awkward. When we stepped out of the conference room, the floor was almost empty. Evening light slanted through the windows, turning everything gold and unreal. "Want to walk?" he asked. "Not to the bar. Just walk." I nodded. Outside, the city felt softer, less sharp. We walked side by side, close enough that our arms brushed occasionally, neither of us pulling away. "This is probably where we talk about rules," Marcus said after a block. I laughed quietly. "You're very responsible for someone suggesting this." "Someone has to be." He glanced at me. "No office stuff. No gossip. If either of us gets uncomfortable, we say it. Immediately. And if it gets messy?" I asked. He didn't hesitate. "Then we deal with it honestly." I stopped walking. Marcus stopped too, turning toward me. "Marcus," I said, voice lower now, "you know this started because I messed up." "I know," he said. "And you stepped in." "Yes. I don't want this to be obligation, or adrenaline, or some weird trauma bond over an email." He stepped closer, not touching, just close. "Victor, I didn't stay because of the mistake. I stayed because of you." My chest tightened. "Besides," he added softly, "if I was going to regret this, I would have backed off already." The city noise faded into background static. For a moment, it felt like it was just the two of us standing there, suspended. "So what now?" I asked. Marcus smiled, slow and deliberate. "Now we see where this goes." He didn't kiss me. That somehow made it worse in the best way. That night, I replayed everything in my head. Every look, every almost touch. I was halfway through convincing myself I'd imagined half of it when my phone buzzed. "Marcus, home safe?" I stared at the screen longer than necessary before typing back. "Me, yeah. You?" "Marcus, yeah." "Victor." I meant what I said. I didn't ask him to clarify. I didn't need to. The next week was electric. Nothing overt happened at work. We were careful, professional, but our eyes met more often. Our conversations lingered. The tension sat between us like a held breath. By Friday, it snapped. We were alone again, this time in the copy room of all places. I was grabbing prints when Marcus stepped in behind me, closing the door with a soft click. "We need to stop ending up alone in small rooms," I said weakly. He smiled. "Probably." The silence stretched. "Victor," he said quietly, "if this is a bad idea, tell me now." I turned to face him. He was close. Too close to pretend anymore. "It is," I said. His smile faded. "But," I added, "I don't want to stop." Something shifted in his eyes. Relief. Want. Decision. He leaned in slowly, giving me every chance to pull away. I didn't. The kiss was careful at first, soft, restrained, like we were still pretending we had control. Then his hand slid to my waist, and that restraint cracked. The world narrowed to warmth and breath, and the realization that this was real. When we finally pulled apart, both a little stunned, Marcus rested his forehead against mine. "Well," he murmured, "that answers that." It should have scared me. Instead, I felt steady, grounded. But I also knew something else, deep down. Once you cross that line, with a coworker especially, one tied to your biggest mistake, there's no going back. And we were only just beginning to understand what that meant. The thing no one tells you about crossing that line is how impossible it is to uncross it. Monday morning proved that immediately. We didn't arrive together. We didn't even look at each other when we first walked onto the floor. I sat at my desk, opened my laptop, and tried to convince my body that nothing had changed. It didn't believe me. I felt Marcus before I saw him. His presence registered the way it hadn't before, like my nervous system had memorized him over the weekend and refused to forget. When he finally passed my desk, he didn't stop. Just nodded once, professional, neutral. It took everything I had not to follow him with my eyes. For the first few hours, it worked. Emails, meetings, numbers. I bury myself in routine. But routine only holds if nothing disrupts it. At 11:23 a.m., my chat window lit up. Marcus, conference room B. 5 minutes. Work-related. I stared at the message, heart already racing. Work-related, he said, like we hadn't kissed in the copy room less than 72 hours ago. I told myself to breathe. Told myself this was fine. Told myself I was an adult. Conference room B was small. Windowless. Familiar. Marcus was already there when I walked in, standing near the table with his laptop closed. The door clicked shut behind me, and the air shifted instantly. Hey, he said. Hey. We stood there for a second, neither of us moving. Okay, he said finally, rubbing the back of his neck. We need to talk. Briefly, before this turns into something stupid. I agree, I said, a little too quickly. His mouth twitched. That bad, huh? No, I admitted. That distracting. Same. He met my eyes. I just want to be clear about expectations. At work, we're solid. Normal. No weirdness. I nodded. Agreed. And outside of work, he hesitated. We take it slow. We check in. We don't let this turn into something that blows up both our lives. I swallowed. Agreed. Silence again. Charged, but steadier this time. Okay, Marcus said. Good. Then dash. He stopped. I raised an eyebrow. Then, he exhaled, stepping closer. Not touching, just close enough that I felt it everywhere. Then I need to know if Friday meant as much to you as it did to me. There it was. No jokes. No deflection. Yes, I said quietly. It did. Relief flickered across his face. Fast but unmistakable. Good, he said. Because I've been trying not to think about you all morning, and it's not going well. I laughed softly. Same. That broke whatever tension was left. The moment softened. Human again. We talked actual work after that, real agenda items, real notes. By the time we left the room, we looked exactly like we always did. No one suspected a thing. That should have been reassuring. Instead, it made everything feel riskier. Over the next few weeks, we slipped into something that felt both careful and inevitable. No touching at work. No messages during office hours that couldn't be explained away. But outside? Outside was different. Dinner turned into cooking together. Cooking turned into staying over. Staying over turned into mornings where I woke up with his arm heavy across my chest, his breath warm against my neck. One night, lying in his bed, I finally said the thing that had been circling my mind. This started because of a mistake. I murmured. Marcus shifted, propping himself up on one elbow. You keep saying that. Because it matters, I said. If I hadn't sent that email dash, you still would have been you, he interrupted. And I still would have noticed. I turned to look at him. When? He smiled. Long before the email. That hit me harder than I expected. Why didn't you say anything? I asked. He shrugged. Work. Boundaries. Fear of misreading things. And now, he said, brushing his thumb along my jaw, we already crossed the line. Might as well be honest on the other side of it. I leaned into the touch, letting myself believe him. The email incident faded into memory. No fallout, no consequences. A closed chapter, or so I thought. Because mistakes don't always punish you immediately. Sometimes they wait until you're comfortable, settled, convinced you're safe. And when they come back, they don't just threaten your job. They threaten everything you built in the aftermath. It came back on a Wednesday. Not loudly, not dramatically, just a calendar invite. Subject, process review, vendor communications. Attendees, management, compliance. Marcus, me. My stomach dropped the second I saw it. I stood there staring at my screen long enough that Marcus noticed. He was already halfway out of his chair before I said anything. They scheduled a review, I said quietly. His face didn't change, but I saw it in his eyes. The flicker of recognition. The memory snapping back into place. When? He asked. Tomorrow morning. He nodded once. Calm. Controlled. Okay, that doesn't automatically mean anything. It's about vendor communications, I said. That's not random. No, he agreed. But it doesn't mean they know. I wanted to believe that. I really did. The rest of the day passed in a fog. We didn't talk much, too risky, too exposed. Every time I caught his eye, it was brief, reassuring, but tense. That night, at his place, the mood was different. We sat on opposite ends of the couch, the TV playing something neither of us was watching. "If this comes out," I said finally, "it's my fault." Marcus turned toward me. "Victor Dash." "I mean it," I said. "You wouldn't even be in that room if I hadn't messed up." He leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "If they're reviewing processes, they're not looking for a scapegoat. They're looking for patterns. And if they find one, then we tell the truth," he said simply. "About the email, not about us." I searched his face. "And if they connect it, they won't," he said firmly. "We've been careful." I nodded, but fear has a way of ignoring logic. That night, he held me like he was anchoring me to something solid. I didn't sleep much. The conference room the next morning felt colder than usual. Management led. Compliance asked questions. Neutral. Methodical. They talked about protocols, attachment checks, escalation paths. Then came a question. "Victor," the compliance officer said, flipping a page. "Last month, there was a brief instance of incorrect documentation sent externally. Can you walk us through that?" My mouth went dry. "Yes," I said. I realized the mistake almost immediately, recalled the message, and followed up. "The vendor confirmed deletion." She nodded. "And how did you obtain the document?" I glanced at Marcus. He met my eyes for half a second. Steady. Encouraging. "I requested it internally," I said. "From Marcus. No hositación. No deflección." The officer turned to him. "And you provided it?" "Yes," Marcus said calmly. "As part of standard workflow. More notes. More nods. No accusations." When the meeting ended, no one pulled us aside. No warnings. No consequences. Just a polite, "Thank you for your transparency." In the elevator afterward, the silence was heavy. "We're okay," Marcus said quietly. "I know," I replied. "I just didn't realize how close it felt." He looked at me, then not at my fear, but through it. "This," he said, "is what being tied to someone actually feels like." That night, something shifted again. Not toward fear, toward commitment. We didn't say it. We didn't label anything. But lying there afterward, his hand resting on my chest, I understood something clearly for the first time. That mistake didn't just pull us together under pressure. It showed us how we function when things got hard. And that mattered more than chemistry, more than secrecy. A few weeks later, we told HR voluntarily, carefully, professionally. There were conversations, boundaries set, adjustments made. No disaster, no fallout, just honesty. Months later, sitting across from Marcus at a small restaurant we both loved, he smiled and said, "You know, if you hadn't sent that email," I laughed softly. "Yeah, we probably would have danced around each other for years." I raised my glass. "To mistakes, then." He clinked his against mine. "To choosing what you do after them." And for the first time, I knew absolutely that one error hadn't ruined my life. It changed it. For good. A year later, the story sounded different when I told it. Less like a confession, more like a quiet fact about how things unfolded. Marcus and I didn't become one of those couples people whisper about at work. After HR set boundaries, our projects shifted just enough that nothing overlapped directly. Different teams, same floor, a deliberate distance that somehow made everything feel more solid, not less. Outside the office, though, we stopped pretending. We moved slowly, intentionally. No dramatic milestones. Just accumulation shared groceries, inside jokes, a toothbrush that stayed over without anyone commenting on it. The kind of intimacy that doesn't announce itself, but settles in any way. One night, months after everything had stabilized, we sat on his balcony with cheap wine and city noise below us. "Do you ever think about it?" I asked. "The email," he said. "Yeah." He smiled faintly. "Sometimes. I still cringe," I admitted. "Every time I hit send on anything." "That's probably healthy," he said. Then, after a pause, "But I don't regret it." I looked at him, "Even knowing what it put you through." He turned fully toward me. "Victor, I didn't get dragged into something. I chose to step in." That distinction mattered more than I realized. "I think," he continued, "most people go through work, relationships, life without ever being fully seen when they mess up. You didn't hide. You trusted me. That did something. I let that sink in. The mistake hadn't bonded us because it was dramatic or dangerous. It bonded us because it stripped everything else away. Titles, distance, politeness. What was left was honesty under pressure. That's not romantic in the obvious way, but it's real. Now, when people ask how we met, we keep it vague. Work, we say. Timing, which is true enough. What we don't say is that one wrong attachment turned into shared panic, shared responsibility, and eventually shared quiet mornings that feel earned. Mistakes don't always destroy things. Sometimes they reveal who stays. And once you know that really know it, you don't forget.